All right, so it's recording. So let me go back. So I'm not going to talk again what the purpose of our community is. That most people who join know, and we have a large group. But I just want to introduce Robert Breeze, and he's going to talk. He's from Germany. So thank you for coming. I don't have a clue what time it is there, but it's probably different time than it is
It's
here in
midnight.
the US. And I'm in Indianapolis, and Ron and them are in California, and Mary. And we generally have an international group here. We never know who's going to join. We could have people from Africa, Europe, or wherever joining this session. So Robert comes with a lot of experience. He actually has written a book like Ron has, and he has, like I said, less. That's my favorite framework. If I had to pick frameworks today, but no framework is perfect, right? But I do like large scale Scrum. And I'm part of that community, but not as expert as Robert. So I'm glad to have Robert here, and then he's going to talk about something really exciting that I think we can all learn from. So Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Hi everyone. Let me try to share my screen and start my presentation. Do you see? Yeah, you see my slide?
Yes. Oh, one thing I forgot. I'm sorry, Robert.
Yes.
If you have questions, what we're going to try to do is wait till the end to answer the questions. Put in the chat room, and Mary and I will kind of gather the questions. Since we're honing down on security because of our bombing last time, we may open it up to have certain people talk when we get to the end. But put it in the chat while Robert talks. We'll gather all that and ask the questions at the end, okay? So Robert, sorry, back over to you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so yeah, my talk today, it's gonna be about 10 ideas to create an agile organization. And you will see those are simplification ideas. And I will talk about why those are simplification ideas just in a bit. But it's going to be like, kind of a top 10 list that I came up over the last 6 to 10 years while I was working with large corporations. And I thought about, I think these are the main things that I would look for in order to implement in a large organization first. And yeah, something about me, and bear with me, I need to make sure that I press here the arrows. Yeah, there you go. So I'm Robert Breeze. As Jay said, I live in Germany. Been the second last trainer from in Germany. Became a last trainer in 2019. I've been in the agile field for around 12 years, but I've been working even before that, I think with agile teams, become a certified Scrum Master in 2011. And that was where I had my first experience where I had the chance to work with one team that was able to actually do some changes in a new system that was at that time at SAP, and we were implementing the new address book for all employees, around 50,000 people. But it was still one single team that was needed to implement this address book. And in 2011, we already had, we were doing continuous integration and continuous delivery. So actually within 45 minutes, we could come with an idea, do some changes in the code and had it live. And I was so amazed about this power of, on the one side, really talking with customers directly, and on the other side, which were the employees that used the address book, and on the other side, really having the ability to do change and see them productive within hours. And I wanted to experience that actually since then with every product that I was developing, with every client that I was trying to work with. And the closest I came was actually with less, and that's why I specialized in less, and I became a less trainer in 2019, and worked at different implementations. I had done my own case study with SAP IT in 2015, and then in 2018, I worked with BMW on the autonomous driving case. So those are cases that I will use also my examples from. Okay, let me go to the next slide, and I talk a bit about my company, Lean Sherpas. It's founded in 2013, and we provide trainings in agile development, and we do all sorts of trainings from organizational design to product development and better product management, to technical excellences and introducing practices and stuff like that. And I think we are the #1 certified LESS training provider in Germany. All German LESS trainers work actually together with Lean Sherpas, and we provide all the German trainings, but also trainings worldwide. And I will show you some at the end, some slides where I'll be teaching next. But let me go to the topic for today. One question that I've always been asked when I'm talking with managers from big companies, CEOs, is about how they can implement agile at scale in their organization. And I find it fascinating because from my perspective, I think this is the wrong question to ask. I think that this complexity that in many organizations is out there or is existing is something that just grew over time, and it is not necessary. And I think that the more important question is not how to introduce some agile practices in your current big complex organization, but actually how to simplify your unnecessary big and complex organization design to actually become agile, to be agile rather than to do agile. I think that's a very important thing to ask, because as I mentioned, I believe with time organizations become more complex. There's the so-called complexity creep, where with time more and more complexity is integrated and the companies become actually more complicated with more processes, more rules, more hierarchies, and all these things make it more difficult to navigate. And what I came to believe is that if you want a resilient and agile organization, like Mike Beadle, one of the Agile Manifesto co-authors, and together with Ken Schwaber, wrote the first book on Scrum. Agility is the ability of an organization to adapt to new conditions and to change its direction while creating maximum value and customer experience. So basically, if you want to become an agile organization, you have to become an organization that is able to adapt, be nimble, and always look at what can we deliver next for valuable for the customer, for our business, and be flexible to do that as fast as possible. Why? Oh, that was too fast. And I believe there are many reasons out there why an organization needs to be agile. If we look at the past, at companies like Kodak, Blockbusters, Sears, and so on, that were not agile enough to go with the needs of the customers out there. and are not existing anymore or are doing pretty poorly. And also you look at the successful companies like Facebook that bought Instagram, Snapchat, Messenger, and so on. You see that you have to really check the trends out there and really adapt very fast. Things like stories that you see in your, in I think Snapchat introduced. After some while, also, you see it in Instagram, in Facebook, in WhatsApp, because this is what people really use. And you don't want to lose your customers just because there is some fancy new ways of expressing yourself that you don't have. So I think this becomes more and more important criteria in our current times, that you become adaptable and able to react on customer needs. So again, for me, the big point is, if you want to become agile and adaptable organization, the goal will be to reduce complexity creep, reduce the complexity within your organization, and by that become adaptive, and also force your team members to learn and become more adaptable. Just because only with learning and working on what's the most important from the customer perspective, you then have the ability to turn direction easily. So the next 10 points that I want to make in my presentation is basically the things that I realized with the clients that I worked were those that make them most successful in becoming adaptable. And this is what I wanted to share with you in this presentation. So as I mentioned before, the main examples that I will be using are from one SAP. That was my first less adoption, where we had at the beginning 3 teams and then moved to 7 teams. It was the e-commerce store where all the SAP online products, but also on-premise products are sold, but also partner products are sold. A product that is based on Hybris, the software for the e-commerce store, but also very strongly integrated with SAP, CRM, ERP, and other tools. And the second case where I will use examples is from BMW, where I worked in 2018, 2019 in the autonomous drive platform. And this was actually less huge. So basically, if you're very familiar with less, then all those 10 ideas will be nothing very new to you. Actually, you will most probably know all of them. But if you're not familiar with less, then those 10 ideas, or some of them, might be very radical and seem like, maybe, curious to how you can really implement it in big, large organizations. But I can assure you by the example that I will give you that you all can. And the first point is actually that when you work in a large organization with multiple teams on one product, then the best thing I experienced to do is have one cadence, or like one sprint, one iteration for all the teams. It should all start at the same point, end at the same point, with one integrated product. And at the end of this sprint, then you would want to review this integrated product together with all teams. And maybe if you have really, really a big amount of teams, like, sorry, I just didn't move the slide. So that's the first point: one sprint, one integrated product. So if you have multiple teams, like 30 teams, you might have kind of different areas that are customer centric, and you might do this this kind of review within that area, but it should still be one integrated product. Why? Because it creates transparency of what works each sprint. If you're familiar with frameworks like SAFe, then you might know that usually, in most of the cases, this kind of integrated product is created not every sprint, but every few sprints, usually 3 months or so. And this is not enough to create transparency on really, daily basis or really frequently enough so that you can also change direction if you see that you're not developing the right products. So I strongly encourage you, whenever you work on bigger products, see if you can have one cadence for all teams, one sprint, and really trying every iteration to look at the whole product, so that basically you can you check, are we building the right things, are there any risks, and so on. So again, as I said, I will give you examples for all the things. At BMW, every 2 weeks, we had a new software of the autonomous drive. So actually, the main sponsor was sitting in the car every 2 weeks and had himself driven by the car on the highway and back. Obviously, he was not there was someone also on the steering wheel that would react if something happens, just for the safety measures. But in every 2 weeks, there was a new software delivered and integrated in the car, and that was tested. At other customers of mine, at Yellow, for example, we do a remote review bazaar with customers. I've talked about this at the last conference, so you can find this talk on YouTube. You can see how to do it. And actually, if you want to experience this, we at my company, Elite Sherpas, we do every month a sprint review, which is open for everyone to join and remotely join this bazaar, see what we have done. If we develop like a software, we developed lately a game for teams to connect and get better as a team together, and all those things we share with customers out there in a kind of bazaar way. And I strongly encourage you to try this if you haven't done before, and open this really to customers to join. So that's the number one idea. Create an integrated product every sprint, not only every 3 months and so on. The next one is about having one product owner and one product backlog. So eliminate product owners on team level, eliminate team product backlogs, and use one product backlog for the whole product to maximize the knowledge of the product group about the overall product, to maximize visibility on what are the most important items, so that everyone understands what are the items that are really most critical. And teams can then pull from this backlog and then work and learn basically the skills they need so that they work on the most important items. Only by this you can ensure that the teams are working on the most valuable items. What I often see is that you have the idea of one product backlog because you conglomerate all the team backlog into one big Jira or whatever tool you use. But the teams are still working on their items. And this is not what I'm talking here about one product backlog. When I'm talking about one product backlog is really one backlog where the teams are really pulling from the top, not from the items that they have refined. That's a very key point. At BMW, we started with this from the beginning. That was that was a main criteria that we set from the beginning. We have to have one backlog that teams are pulling from the top. At SAP, we didn't, and that's a very interesting case. If you read my case study on Less.Works, is that we moved from having team product owners and team product backlogs to actually one product owner and one product backlog, and that was a very difficult process to do. And the way we did it is that before every product backlog refinement and before every sprint planning, I had a session with all these so-called team product owners, and I asked them to order all the backlogs on team level in one order. And by that, basically, we created this kind of one product backlog by forcing everyone to create one order of all the items. And it was a very, very painful process. And it got escalated many times until the most senior person, the VP of marketing, actually then designated one person to do all this ordering and to make the decisions. And this was then the actual one product owner. So that's the second very important tip that I can give you from my 10 points. The next one is to expand the product definition. So even if your product might be small, if you want to optimize for adaptability from the customer perspective, then the best thing you can do is actually to broaden your product definition and create one product backlog from all the small products that are very related to each other. So define the product as broadly as possible by asking yourself, what does the customer see as a product? Or are there different components that are shared? For a banking software, for example, it's not only the mobile app or the website where you do the transaction, but it's everything, the app and the website and the whole financial services. So look at what the customer might see as the product and broaden that perspective. Because again, if you do that, you enable a more customer-centric view. You prioritize again for the most important items. If it's a bug in the mobile app or on the website or anywhere else, you will put it on top. And there's not only one team, but you have all your teams that will work on the most important items. And another very important thing is that you resolve dependencies between separated products, because the teams are then in charge of taking care of these dependencies. You don't have any middlemen and middle positions, and this creates this whole complexity that I've seen in many large organizations of middle teams that need to be there to resolve dependencies between separate products. So that's a very important idea. You might start small with one smaller product definition, but you want to go bigger. For example, at SAP IT, we had different teams working on different offerings in the e-commerce store. So we have partner products, we have SAP offerings, and they all had different kind of requirements. Some products also regarding payment or stuff like that. But we understood that we want not to optimize locally on these different products, but we want to optimize from the e-commerce store perspective. And that's why we enhance the product definition, not on partner products, SAP offerings, but the whole e-commerce store. And that's something that you should be looking out as a tip in order to remove the whole complexity. The fourth point is about creating feature teams. And this is a very crucial thing, in my opinion, that if you want to optimize for adaptability, you need to eliminate specialized roles. And this is what Scrum actually does on a single team level. There are no testers, or there are no business analysts or designers, but you have product developers with specific skills. They have some good skills in testing, or there are product developers with skills in design and so on. But there is not specialized roles, and there shouldn't be kind of this kind of discussions that I'm not doing, I only do development, I don't do testing, or I'm not doing the design, this person should do the design part. Obviously, the ones that have the skills should lead with doing the specific work that is required. But the whole idea was in Scrum is that basically you help yourself and do whatever is needed and learn the skills, so that at the end of the iteration of a sprint, you implement as a team the whole product. And this is crucial, and we want this not only to happen on a team level, but actually also on the organizational level for the whole product group. So try to get rid of any kind of specialized roles. If there is a QA manager or QA lead or dev lead or design lead or whatever, look at eliminating the specialized roles, because only by that you improve the learning and adaptability on a team level, and create more engaged people that take more responsibility. At SAP IT, we from the beginning, we had different teams. We had someone that was, or a team that was doing deployments to production. We had a specialized testing teams. And when we introduced LESS, we created feature teams and actually had all this different, looked at all the skills that are needed in a team in order to do design, testing, do ERP development, hybrids development, and then we created teams with all the skills. At BMW, we didn't take that further and let the team self-design. So we only looked at the skills that are needed and asked the teams then to the people to design, like to select themselves into different teams. And there's also some nice explanation video on YouTube about the self-designing team workshops that you can search and find. So this would be the ideal way of creating those teams. But really look at creating feature teams that are not only cross-functional, but are also cross-component, so they can work and are allowed to work on any part of the system, so that they can create end-to-end customer value, end-to-end customer features. That was point number 4. Let me go to number 5, which is eliminate specialized processes. So you not only want to eliminate specialized roles, but you also want to eliminate specialized processes, meaning like project management. Obviously, with Scrum and agile development, you have no need for project management if you make it right. And if you do iterative incremental development, you have no fixed scope anymore. You might have fixed budget and fixed timing, but the scope is flexible. So you look at what you can deliver every 2 weeks, and change your plans. Work closely with the customers and users, and you deliver some product increment, and you change based on that. And this so Scrum itself eliminates the project management. Unfortunately, in big, large organization, I still see this. But if you do things like less, Nexus, or other things where you deliver every 2 weeks, actual to the customer and get immediate feedback, then you don't need this project management. And it's the same with the portfolio management. If you, as I mentioned before, brought your product definition to everything that is within the portfolio, then you have in this huge backlog, the bigger items down in the portfolio down, and you start some of those items on top of the backlog. Teams are working on it, and you decide every sprint, are we continuing in investing in all those things at the same time, or do we want to not invest in one part of the portfolio at all? So you would do this portfolio management on sprint to sprint basis if you would work with one big product for all the teams. And that creates more team ownership of the processes and meaningful work. That was, my number 5. Let's go to number 6. And number 6 is let team resolve dependencies. So this is something that is very important and also difficult to do. And it's connect, and you'll see that many of those items are kind of connected to each other. It's connect with the item that I said before about reducing specialized roles and having specialized people or roles that do the coordination. Don't have that. Get rid of coordinators. Scrum masters should not be coordinators, or team product owners that you should not have shouldn't be coordinators. Try to really get rid of coordinators, but give this responsibilities to the teams to manage the coordination, not only within themselves, so with other teams and even with teams outside the product groups. Our favorite coordination technique in less is just talk, really go over. I realized that it's with coordination, it's not about the technique to use, but realizing that you have to coordinate and with whom to talk. So we prefer decentralized coordination over centralized coordination, meaning when there is need, just talk with each other. And the best way to figure out there is need to talk is if you do continuous integration, you communicate in code. You see that another team is now changing some parts of the code that your team is also changing. Then you can just walk over and talk about this change. And this is what I mean by communicate in code. Do continuous integration. You see how other teams are like just working on similar parts, and then you can resolve this immediately by talking with each other. And you don't need coordinators and stuff like that. So we support this kind of coordination techniques in less or any other framework. Communities are very good for coordination and creating rule sets and stuff like that. You might want to have a design guide. And as I said, we encourage not to have a kind of head of a specialized role as the head of design or something like that. And if you would have a design community, you could discuss in that community what are the rule set for designs, and use that basically across as a coordination technique, which would allow you not to rely on a specific role, bottleneck for doing these decisions. But of course, there are also cross-team meetings that can be used, like a shared sprint planning, a shared product backlog refinement, and those all can be also used to coordinate. And other techniques that we encourage in less is open space, component mentors, travelers, scouts, or leading teams. What is quite important with that is that you also want to have a coordination-friendly environment. So at BMW, they built actually a completely new building with open offices for multiple teams, just for this less huge endeavor. So the teams were sitting together in one big room, or usually 2 or 3 teams in one big room at one table each team. And they also had separate room with glass windows where they were working closely together, doing more programming 50% of the time. That allows for great coordination and ownership of the teams, not only to do the work, but also being responsible for the whole system. And I think this is very critical and important. Let me go to number 7, and this is very much related to number 6 and resolving dependencies, is that I encourage you to eliminate geographical distribution. The more the teams are sitting together, as I mentioned at BMW, where they would work on a table together in the same big room, then you have much better way to coordinate with each other, and this increases the whole product focus. And you see faster if you have problems that you need to coordinate more. So try to reduce the number of sites or locations, the number of buildings, the same site, but in different buildings, and even the number of floors if you work in the same building. Get rid of separate cubicles or offices. And if you cannot do that because it's too difficult, it requires a too big of a change, like you cannot, like BMW, build a new building just for that, at least make sure that the whole teams or team members, ideally the whole teams, travel between the sites and they see each other regularly so they can work each other. At SAP IT, we actually traveled at least every 3 months, getting the team come over, the whole team in one location, and they spend a whole sprint together. And also you want to share cross-team spaces for relaxing, learning, information sharing. And what we also encourage people to do is have white walls with whiteboards, or if they are just regular walls, we use this magic white paper that we put on the walls from top to bottom, so people can always document, write down, and whenever they speak about something, they can make it visual. So that's a important thing to consider. Now let me go to number 8. Just coming to the end. Empower your employees. Look at what are harmful HR practices that are against this agility and owningness of learning and adaptability, and try to remove that. So usually if you have things like incentives on productive measures, or incentive on individual, on team performance, I think incentives in general are quite harmful. So try to remove those things. Things like performance appraisals have usually a negative effect on the people in an agile organization. Look at how to remove that. Eliminate hierarchies. An important thing that we learned from lean thinking is have managers as teachers. At BMW, we actually managed to get rid of one full manager hierarchy. It was the team manager. So when they introduced last, they got rid of team managers. There was no team managers anymore. There were managers for up to 60 people, and not for one team. They also got rid of job titles. There was maybe you could have some external, like an external title that you would put on LinkedIn or so on, but internally everyone was a developer, and they had different skills, like different levels. There was the level, developer level 2, level 3, level 4, depends on how many skills you had. But everyone was a product developer. And that was very important in order to create this kind of, ownership, getting rid of the roles, as I mentioned before, by getting rid of the titles. So this is also a very powerful way how you can increase your adaptability and remove this complexity within organizations by getting rid of titles, or even career paths, simplifying the career paths by making sure that you can always increase your skills and learn more skills, but you're not forced to become kind of a manager if you always wanted to do development. And the managers in an agile organization, and the way I see it, are more like we know it from lean thinking. They are teachers. They do go see at Gemba, so they go at the way where at the place where the product is developed. They do pair programming or more programming with the teams and help them to become even better at their job. That's my tip number 8. Tip number 9, or idea number 9, which I think is also extremely important, is to use advanced agile engineering practices. So as I mentioned here under why, I think technical agility constrains organizational agility, meaning that it doesn't matter like how well you organize, you change your organizational design, and you create feature teams and all those nice things that I was talking also before. If you're not able to deliver fast and safely, to always create good products, like every iteration or even faster than that, if you only can release once per year or once per half a year, then it doesn't matter how agile your organization is as a system, as a structure, policies, and all the stuff, because you will not gain anything from that. You only gain if you can release your product, as I mentioned, ideally every sprint or even more than that. And that, from my perspective, required a huge investment in technical excellence. So I can only see this happening in organization where you have continuous integration and delivery implemented, where you have test-driven development and acceptance test-driven development, or specification by example, have a high-level automated testing, and constantly improve your code and your architecture. And it's something that, for example, at SAP, we moved from releasing one every 2 months to releasing every sprint. And it took a while, but we only managed to do that because we invested a lot in this automated testing, and that was only possible when we introduced test-driven development. So this is a very important aspect that you should think about. And last but not least, my 10th point, my 10th idea, is to also improve as an organization as often as possible, which would be also every iteration, ideally every 2 weeks, retrospect and think about improvements. You should also have a kind of organizational perfection vision. Where do you want to optimize, what you want to optimize your system for, and see if your changes that you are discussing and doing are helping to achieve this organizational perspective vision. And therefore, I encourage you to do retrospectives, not only on team level, but also on product level, every sprint. At BMW, we had every sprint team retrospectives, and then an overall retrospective in each product area or requirement area, as we call it in LESS, where we not only had team representatives, but also the product owner, the scrum masters, and managers. And that's very important because, and that's what I personally like very much about LESS, is that it allows to have your team retrospectives where you think about what can I improve as a team, only closed for the team with no managers or product owner joining, but the overall retrospectives with representatives from multiple teams, you have managers because they are quite important to change organizational structures, policies, even how the team setup is maybe done. All these things usually are discussed or decided by the managers. So you want to have them there so that they can take off this responsibility. I often like to actually have those managers start the retrospectives, overall retrospectives, and report to the teams what kind of impediments they have been fixing and working on. And that creates a very nice dynamic in overall retrospective to see that the manager are really taking charge of doing improvements in the organization. And we also encourage to use system modeling to discuss the whole organizational system and to see what effects we have from the current development way of work. So yeah, this were my actually 10 ideas about how to improve your adaptability in your organization. And I have a couple of more slides with more information about me and my courses. But I will leave first this slide and see if you have any questions.
Yeah. So,
Jay, are there any questions in the chat?
Let me look here. So Mary or Ron, I don't see any.
So while you're looking at the chat, let me ask a question.
Yes.
So advanced agile engineering practices, you did not list pair programming or mob programming.
Yes, that's true. I was focusing more on this like technical things, but I see them definitely as engineering practices. Yeah, so pair programming, mob programming, we did it a lot at BMW and also SAP. But as I said, at BMW, 50% of the time was actually mob programming. And I see them as critical to do them, even though I didn't put them there on the slide. But thanks for mentioning it.
And then let me ask another question that's always boggled my mind relative to LESS, which is one product owner for the whole product.
Yes.
I presume that doesn't mean one product manager for the whole product.
Correct. Correct.
How do you, or how does LESS, or how did BMW, or how did SAP organize that such that my experience has been that a fast-moving team can swamp a team-based product owner in all of the responsibilities that Scrum gives them. how do you deal with all of those responsibilities?
So if you look at the product owner in Scrum, that role was defined as the owner of the product, the one that is responsible for the return of investment, the one who makes the decisions about what is like, what's the most important thing to do. And because you want actually all the people that are developing the product to understand the product, understand the needs of the customers or end users, and understand what needs to be done, and even come with like the problems and come with the best solutions. You want them to spend most of the time actually not only implementing stuff that was, you know, written by a product owner or by someone else down in a user story or in an kind of artifact, but you want them to actually discuss this, the whole team, in a product backlog refinement, and come up with suggestions, solutions, proposals, experiments. It's all about, you know, hypotheses and figuring out if your hypothesis of how you solve a problem or how you deliver what the customer will use next or need is actually at the end the right thing, the one that they are also actually doing. So you want to involve the teams as much as possible in coming up with the ideas and then doing all this refinement work. And then, like, I mean, again, if you have one Scrum team and with one product owner, then you might say, yeah, the product owner can also do some work there. But in usually, like, this is the person that has the budget and has the main responsibility of the product. And from my experience, the more this person really focus on like really stakeholder management and high level prioritization, but leaving everything to the teams to do the actual defining the items, defining the hypotheses, defining the items, that, figuring out how they would test, so writing the acceptance criteria and so on, the more they will take also the ownership of the product implementation. So, and that doesn't mean that you don't have product managers in the team. So what you will actually do, you will have a lot of, usually in less setups, you will have a lot of business people, product managers in the teams. And these usual team product owners are great, amazing business analysts, but they don't own a product, and they should not own this component or this part of the product that is built by this specific team. Because as I mentioned before, you want to have one big list of items, not team specialized on locally on some component or some parts of this system, as you want them to work on what's most important items. So you might want to have a team that at the moment they're working on the administration part of the banking software, and then they work on a new payment. They should not always work on this specific part, like only payments, Apple Pay or so on, for months and months. And because then you really optimize locally on this part of the product, and you miss the opportunity to have all the teams working on what's most important. And that's why I'm saying, like, you would have product managers in all the teams that help with this work, but you only have one really responsible of the product, and this is the product owner. So I think this is something that is often misunderstood and misinterpreted, misused in many large organizations that have doing this kind of copy and paste Scrum. They create a product owner on each team on team level, but this is not really a product owner, because they don't own the whole product. They think they own a component, or this thing that the teams are building, but this leads to a lot of local optimization and a bad effect, in my opinion.
So I like that notion of focusing on the product and the product being as broad as possible. The question, the other side of that is if the teams that are taking various different kinds of things, they're not specializing in climate, or they're not specializing, who owns the maintenance of that? So we gain the short term, the development, but lose the maintenance side.
We don't lose it because it will be basically still the responsibilities of the teams. And the way how we did it, for example, at SAP, is whenever a new defect was coming up in any part of the product, we just, like it was posted, it came automatically in Slack where all the teams could see it. And it was like, okay, let's wait to see which team picks it up first. And it became a competition, actually, of the teams picking up defects and fixing them. They were not finger pointing anymore to each other as they did in the past, where it was like, oh, that's not my part, that's something of your part, you fix that because you made it. And we obviously discussed it in a retrospective, how we can get that, how we can improve the quality. We introduced the fact that with every fix, there has to be a new automated test, so this problem, it doesn't come anymore. But it came a nice game that everyone started to feeling responsible, not only for building new things, but to fixing things. And the main key here is, from my perspective, to move from code ownership on team level to shared code ownership. So everyone is allowed to do changes in all the codes. And it's something that Google speaks about it, how they do it with one repositories for thousands of teams. And I think it's very crucial also to do as advanced agile engineering practices to move from single code ownership on the team level to shared code ownership. But with that becomes more like additional responsibility, obviously, but also a stronger feeling of commitment and identifying yourself with the product.
Cool. So I do have some questions here. So I've a few. So Tamara Blake asks, in the era of remote workers, how does that fit into your model, or does it?
Sorry, what was the question? The remote
workers? Yeah. So in the distributed remote worker environment, you know, COVID pushed us into that.
That's a good point. I mentioned on number 7 that I would try to eliminate geographical distribution. And from my perspective, a team that is spending a lot of time together would always outperform a team that doesn't see each other. Now, you could say that, and nowadays I'm aware of many teams that are doing remote mob programming, and they work as a whole team, sometimes even up to 8 hours the whole time they do mob programming remotely. And I think that gets pretty close to you know, to being together. Still, I think that there are some things that you wouldn't catch, like that you would catch when you sit together and when you go for lunch and so on, that you don't catch over the camera. If someone is just doesn't feel good or so on, they can fake it somewhere over camera, but not as good if you're in person. So I would still want to have the possibility for these teams to see each other as often as possible and spend time. But if they can't, then at least do more programming remotely, and spend quite some time as a whole team remotely, so that you have this kind of bounding, which is difficult if you just, you know, write over Slack but don't see each other and see these feelings, because again, it's not about, and I see also questions about metrics. A lot of people say, well, we managed the whole COVID part very well. Our efficiency didn't go down, it went up, and so on. But when you look at the topic again of creating agile organization, if you want to create agile adaptive organizations, the most important thing that you want to take care of or to improve towards, if you want like a metric, is adaptability, which means learning. So you want to improve the learning, and this is like, okay, having your skills. And from my perspective, this is super hard to like when it comes to metrics to measure. Like, you could see it somehow. Are the teams only working on one thing, or are they working on different topics? How good are they at taking items from the backlog, even if they're not that familiar with it? But with measuring is always a problem of gaming that. So if you put this as a metric, then people will start to game that, and that's why, to answer the question about metrics, I wouldn't enforce it or encourage to do any outside metrics. I'm not saying metrics are bad, and unless we're saying with metrics, it's always about who measures and why. So metrics are good as long as those metrics are set by the ones that are measured. So never have a manager measuring the team, but it's fine if the team measures themselves to improve. They're super fine. Look at how much time we do with learning, how good the testings are and stuff like that. That's super okay. And also understand, why do we have this measure in place? What are we trying to improve on? So with those two things in place, metrics are fine. But otherwise, you can game them, and you can create very weird and nasty dynamics that you don't want to have.
Yeah, so Amber asks, any ideas how to do more advanced agile practices when you're in a heavy government regulated company?
So, well, I think test-driven development, you always can use that. So I don't see a problem with test-driven development in a regular company. Actually, it's even better to have many automated tests and to improve your, to make sure that those things that are regulated are actually built into tests and automated tests. So I see, like, I mean, BMW with you can imagine that it was super critical that the autonomous drive software would not lead to any kind of accident or problem, because that would lead, like, to people dying. So we had experts in the teams that would have, supporting the developers to make sure that the right tests and those regulations are enforced into tests.
All right. So is there any metrics being captured? Well, yeah, we capture metrics left and right, but are they the right metrics? I'm answering that for you, Rob.
Yeah. That's what I said before, right? Is that you have to be super careful with metrics, and those are like ideas, and it's good to look at metrics for the adaptability of teams. One thing that I like to look at them as a metric is the definition of done, right? Definition of done in Scrum is basically the list of things that the team can do in order to say this items from the product backlog is done. Ideally, this list includes everything that has to be done so that the product increment is live, and all the things that are done besides the product increment setting it live also are done, like customer documentation is changed, marketing information is sent out, and all the things that are related with the product. Ideally, you want to have everything in your definition of done, and you will, I assume, in most of the parts will be very far away from this ideal definition of done when you start, because you don't have the skills, or because your organization is so big that marketing is a completely different department, or even, you might have support department or a department that's taking care of the production, transport, or stuff like that. So you will start with a very weak definition of done at the beginning, and that's something that I always see as like a nice metrics, is how far is the definition of done from the ideal definition of done, where you have produced after every product increment, after you're done, everything is actually done. There's nothing that has to be changed anymore. Transport to production, customer information, or end user documentation and stuff like that. That might be a nice metric, but again, be with metrics, because you introduce a kind of a gaming in your system, in your organization, and people are experts in gaming if their reward is depend on or that or other things. So you want to have metrics that are set up by the teams themselves to improve something in the system. And there are many things that you can look at. Definition of done, you can look at how many, how much learning you do, how, look at the Accelerate book, for example. They're proposed for good metrics about how good of a quality you are delivering, how fast can you deliver to production, how reliable you deliver to production. So those all can be good metrics, but not if you're like really measured upon from outside. Then they will become very critical.
Cool. And then there's I'll answer this for you, but Robert, I'll let you answer it as well. There's anywhere there's examples of shared backlog, examples would be very helpful. So if you go out to the LESS website and see there's use cases out there and customer cases, and Robert has his out there, they kind of walk through some of those examples, but I know if you reach out to people that are in the LESS network, they can probably provide them. So Robert, what would you say to that?
Exactly. So maybe if you want to see the working model here, I have a picture. Maybe I can show that quickly.
So Robert, while you're bringing it up, that is a huge difference in a lot of implementations of Scrum and Agile, is to have one backlog for multiple teams.
Yeah.
And organize it. I've noticed that's a very different implementation across many companies.
Yeah. Well, this is very tough to do, and I said I've been engaged with companies. They say, yeah, we have a product backlog, but then if I look at that, and they put everything in this one big backlog in Jira or other tools, but then I see that the teams are actually working on their items in that product backlog. So they're picking, and I see them picking item 50, 51. And I was like, wait a second, but you know, you're picking on 50, and the items that are much higher, no one picks until the one team that has created them has time to work on them. This is not the product backlog, you know. This is like a fake way of saying you have one product backlog. You only have one product backlog if you really also pick from top of that. And this is not very hard, not very, like, in theory it's easy, but in practice it's very hard, because the teams have not the skills. The teams don't have the skills to work on that, and you want to work on this. And it's not gonna be the most efficient way of working. The most efficient way of working is if that one person that does something good always does that thing. That one team that knows a component or a part always does working on this part. But the question that you always have to ask yourself is, do you want to optimize for resource efficiency, or do you want to optimize for flow efficiency? Basically, how fast can you deliver the product increment? And now that's the fun part, is less doesn't optimize for any of those. Less doesn't optimize for resource efficiency, not at all, and not necessarily for flow efficiency, at least at the beginning. With time it does, but it optimizes for adaptability, for learning. You force the teams that don't know much about something, that they start learning, and it might take them longer to deliver that, but because it's up in this one product backlog, they cannot just work on item 55 from the backlog. They have to take item 3 if no other team takes it. And they might be very slow at the beginning of delivering this item, but with time they will become better. But you optimize your organization to work on what's most critical. But also here, it's something that I will have to discuss more. I go into more details, is the fact that now your product backlog is a real product backlog. So what I see in most organizations, I don't see real product backlogs. I see component backlogs. So or items that are very technical, written by component teams that work on these items, create this API, do this microservice, or do this, and so on. What we want in a product backlog in Scrum and in LeSS is to have customer-centric items, customer-centric requests, features, and then you have to slice them down in very small pieces that are still customer-centric. Example, BMW. So we didn't have any kind of like create a simulation, do this connection with the cameras and stuff like that. We had let the car in the curve be able to follow the curve. See if, like, have the car stop at the next sign. Now, the team was saying, well, but we cannot do it in one sprint. So then the challenge is, how can you slice it smaller, but still from the customer perspective? So then you say, okay, then at least realize that there is a sign if you cannot stop it. In the first sprint, you see the sign. And then in the next sprint, maybe you implement a test that you don't stop at the sign, and it should be red, or it should tell you that you should have been stopped, and so on. So you do it step by step, but still looking at the customer perspective. That's a very, very critical thing. And the teams that I work in most organizations are not familiar with this way, because they always were familiar with doing technical items, doing technical things, and now they have to start working in the customer language, which is very different how they were working before. But this is Scrum, and this is how you want to do it.
Yeah, so I want to be considerate of everyone's time. So Ken and Mike will have a question. I think we'll end with that. So Ken says, I understand the concept, but I have never seen this in practice. Well, you can go out to Les' website, and there's a lot of case studies with many companies who've done this. It'll be interesting, multiple backlogs that get harmonized into one backlog. Well, I'll let Robert talk about that. Like you said, it's easier said than done. I'm also not following why one would have multiple teams if this is only one backlog. Why not have one team? Well, because you need many teams to get the work done, right? So Robert, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, so again, I wouldn't encourage to have multiple teams. And this is actually something that Craig Lyman always said at the beginning. So if you can do it with one team, stay with one team. But obviously, you like with requests, with new ideas and so on, then you want to produce more. And then your team grows. And a team of 30 people is way too big. You cannot do a daily with 30 people and so on. Then we encourage to have small teams of 6 people, 7 people, and then you have 5 of them or so on. And then work with these 5 small teams from that one product backlog. So that's the whole idea. And if you really want to read more, is again, come to my large scale Scrum course. Read the where I give you more examples and I go into more details, or go on Les.works. The BMW case study is detailed there. The SAP case study is also there. It's not called SAP Store because I was not allowed to use the name SAP. But with BMW, they got the approval from the higher management at SAP. It took too long, so it's called SYS Store. But you will notice that it's about SAP. So read this case studies. You get more details about really how it worked with one product backlog, and even I explained there how we moved from multiple backlogs to one. But yeah, it would take too much time now to go into the details. But I can assure you that it is feasible. Like it's possible to go from to work with not only one but also 2, 3, 5, and even hundreds of teams with one backlog. But it's gonna be a different beast if you have more than 8 teams, and that's where Les introduced less huge with area product backlogs and area product owners. But that's a different story that I don't have time now to go into details. Again, if you want to learn more, I will share you just at the end a few slides with information about my last course. What's the other question, Jay?
Yeah, last question. So this is a long one. So it seems to me that job descriptions have for some time and continue to indicate a preference for specialists with deep experience in special. Do you agree? If so, then does this need to evolve to better enable cross-functional, cross-component feature teams?
Absolutely. Very good point, Michael. I think that's very good point. And we noticed this even in the last adoption at BMW. So obviously, if you write a job description because damn, we need people that are good at AI. We need people that are good at rendering. We need people that, and then you write job descriptions looking for machine learning specialists. Then you get people that come apply for this job. That happens at BMW, and then they come into this environment where we say, well, but if you're just doing your skill and you become even better and you're great at it, that's great for you, but not for our organization, for the product. We want people that learn different skills, and if machine learning is not a big thing anymore, or at least this sprint is not, then we don't want you to work on unimportant stuff just because it's machine learning and skip all this important stuff. So and that create a lot of problems, I would say, just because the job description was there and people were applying for that. So yes, there is a need for evolvement and movement into direction that we start to look more for, we even call this not T-shaped but M-shaped people, so that are becoming, have multiple specialties that they are very good at, and make it clear that we might look with some people that have great skills in machine learning and rendering, but you might also be, you know, needed to work on other skills and even do marketing or whatever for the sake of the product and adaptability of the company. So we have to evolve that, making sure that in an agile adaptive company, people are willing to learn and specialize in different fields. And it only works, actually, from my perspective, with those individuals. They are willing to do it, and not everyone is. And I think that's okay. But if you're not willing to learn multiple skills, and unfortunately, some companies are still giving rewards based on just this one single skill, and people think that all they need to do is have this one perfect skill, then you will not be a good fit in an adaptive organization.
Great. Well, that's, I'm really conscious of everyone's time. It's 7:28 Eastern time. So I want to thank Robert for his willingness to come here and educate all of us, and so we can learn. Thank you, Robert. And sign up for his courses. He'll be doing these less courses throughout the year.
Let me show the slides. I will send them to you, Jay, and you can publish them in a meetup. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can check the courses on Lean Sherpas, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. I just published a video about an animation about LESS, and we will publish more content. I mentioned we developed a game for teams to become better at bonding and so on. You can try that. We just started a beta for that. My next course is we have one online on the from 20th to the 24th of March. I do a online course in English in CST time, so US time, and I also I have planned one course in San Diego beginning of April. It's not sure if it's gonna happen. Depends on how many people are signing up, but I also have one in July this year, and I'm pretty sure that this one will happen. So if you're planning to go there and want to learn more about LESS, it's a 3-day course, and I will go into more details about about the things that I mentioned today.
Great. Robert, I'm pretty sure that would be an awesome class to pick up for LESS. So you've been very fascinating over the last hour and a quarter, or hour and a half. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Nice to hear it.
Yeah, so we'll put this up on our YouTube channel. If Robert sends me the deck, I'll put that up too. But thank you, Robert. We'll keep in touch. Everyone's got his email and everything else. Reach out to him. He's a nice guy, and he'll be happy to build a relationship with you and go forward. So thank you again, Robert. Thank you, everyone. And we'll say sayonara. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Awesome.